Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Rice with the April Book of the Month. You know, I work so hard to try to find books that will really appeal to you all and help you learn something special, help us talk about character and who we are on the inside and how we can use our gifts and talents to help other people. And this month, I took a recommendation from Miss Prosser in our Media Center. Miss Prosser shared this book with me last year, and I absolutely fell in love with this book. It's a new book to me. It's called Rosie, Revere, Engineer. And I had told Miss Prosser I was really looking for a book that would help bring science to light, make us excited about learning more about science and STEM. But I also wanted to find a book that talked about women and the impact that women have had on our country. Well, this book is absolutely perfect. And I don't know if you know about history, but back during World War II, there was a fictional character called Rosie Riveter, or Rosie the Riveter. And she was a character. She had a cartoon, she had a scarf over her head, and people used her as a symbol for everything that women did during World War II. If you think about it, during the war, a lot of the men in our country had left to go fight in either Germany or Europe or Japan, in Asia, in some of these different areas away from the United States. And our country needed people who worked on farms to grow food or who worked in factories to build things. We needed ships and tanks and jeeps for the war effort, and many women went to work. And so Rosie the Riveter became a symbol for all those women who went and helped our country during the time of war. And so the author of this book, this is Andrea Beatty. Andrea wrote this book and used Rosie the Riveter as her idea, as her character. But this character is actually called Rosie Revere. And she is a second grade girl who loves to build things, who loves engineering, who loves trying to figure out how things work and how to create things. And I'm excited to share this book with you and hopefully see if this inspires a little creative genius in you as well. So let's get started. Rosie Revere, Engineer by Andrea Beatty, illustrated by David Roberts. This is the story of Rosie Revere, who dreamed of becoming a great engineer. In Lila Greer's classroom at Blue River Creek, young Rosie sat shyly, not daring to speak. But when no one saw her, she peeked in the trash for treasures to add to her engineer's stash. And late at night, Rosie rolled up her sleeves and built in her hideaway under the eaves. Alone in her attic, the moon high above, dear Rosie made gadgets and gizmos she loved. And when she grew sleepy, she hid her machines far under the bed where they'd never be seen. When Rosie was young, she had not been so shy. She worked with her hair swooping over one eye and made fine inventions for uncles and aunts, a hot dog dispenser and helium pants. The uncle she loved most was zookeeper Fred. She made him a hat to keep snakes off his head. From parts of a fan and some cheddar cheese spray, which everyone knows keeps the pythons away. And when it was finished, young Rosie was proud. But Fred slapped his knee and he chuckled out loud. He laughed till he wheezed and his eyes filled with tears, all to the horror of Rosie Revere, who stood there embarrassed, perplexed, and dismayed. She looked at the cheese hat and then looked away. "I love it," Fred hooted. "Oh, truly I do." But Rosie Revere knew that could not be true. She stuck the cheese hat on the back of her shelf and after that day kept her dreams to herself. And that's how it went until one autumn day, her oldest relation showed up for a stay. Her great-great-aunt Rose was a true dynamo who'd worked building airplanes a long time ago. She told Rosie tales of the things she had done and goals she had checked off her list, one by one. She gave a sad smile as she looked to the sky. "The only thrill left on my list is to fly." But time never lingers as long as it seems. I'll chalk that one up to an old lady's dreams. That night, as Rosie lay wide-eyed in bed, a daring idea crept into her head. Could she build a gizmo to help her aunt fly? She looked at the cheese hat and said, "No, not I." But questions are tricky and some hold on tight, and this one kept Rosie awake through the night. So when dawn approached and red streaks lit the sky, young Rosie knew just how to make her aunt fly. She worked and she worked till the day was half gone, then hauled her cheese copter out onto the lawn to give her invention a test just to see the ridiculous flop it might turn out to be. Strapped into the cockpit, she flipped on the switch. The Helio cheese copter sputtered and twitched. It floated a moment and whirled round and round, then froze for a heartbeat and crashed to the ground. Then Rosie heard laughter and turned round to see the old woman laughing and slapping her knee. She laughed till she wheezed and her eyes filled with tears, all to the horror of Rosie Revere, who thought, "Oh no, never, not again will I try to build something to sputter or spin, or build with a lever, a switch, or a gear, and never will I be a great engineer." She turned round to leave, but then Great-Great-Aunt Rose grabbed hold of young Rosie and pulled her in close, and hugged her and kissed her and started to cry. "You did it! Hooray! It's the perfect first try. This great flop is over. It's time for the next." Young Rosie was baffled, embarrassed, perplexed. "I failed," said dear Rosie. "It's just made of trash. Didn't you see it? The cheese copter crashed." "Yes," said her great aunt, "it crashed, that is true. But first it did just what it needed to do. Before it crashed, Rosie, before that, it flew. Your brilliant first flop was a raging success. Come on, let's get busy and on to the next." She handed a notebook to Rosie Revere, who smiled at her aunt as it all became clear. Life might have its failures, but this was not it. The only true failure can come if you quit. They worked till the sun sneaked away to its bed. Aunt Rose tied her headscarf around Rosie's head and sent her to sleep with a smile ear to ear, to dream the bold dreams of a great engineer. At Blue River Creek, all the kids in grade 2 build gizmos and gadgets and doohickeys too. With each perfect failure, they all stand and cheer, but none quite as proudly as Rosie Revere. Boys and girls, wasn't that a great book? I just love that Miss Prosser introduced me to this book. And if you didn't know, there's actually a whole series of books that talk about different ways that girls have made a difference in science and in the STEM fields. So you might want to check those out in our library. I really loved the theme of this book too. If you hadn't thought through it, I think one of the big things they talk about is never quitting. There's a big word that we've talked about before that's called persevere. Persevere means you keep trying, even if things don't work, you don't quit. And just like Rosie said in the book, the only true failure can come if you quit. Things aren't always going to work out the way we want. Big ideas that we had sometimes don't work. But if we keep trying and we keep thinking and we problem solve and we look at it from a different angle, we can try to make things even better than they were before. And I love that part of Rosie. I love that she didn't give up. I love that she kept trying. She used her creative genius to look for different ways to make things better. And I know that you can do that too. So as you are working through April, we have a lot going on in April. Our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders will be taking our Georgia Milestones test. Some of those questions are going to be tough. And I hope that you will think like Rosie. I hope that you will persevere. You will keep trying. You'll look at it from another angle, and you won't quit. because that only true failure comes when we quit. So keep trying, keep learning, keep sharing your gifts and talents with those around you. Have a fabulous April, boys and girls.